Hello there everyone, and welcome back to Void Dwarf Studios for another episode of Warhammer Wednesdays. Well, it'll be earlier for you if you're Patreon, but you get the idea. Anyway, I've been thinking, and it's actually been a little bit of a struggle to work out what next Age of Sigmar army to actually talk about, until I realised that a hell of a lot of the stuff that's happening right now seems to be revolving around Slaanesh, and the idea that Slaanesh is now back and is going to cause all kinds of problems. So I figured, as that seems to be a pretty hot topic, I will dive into the hedonites of Slaanesh and the Slaaneshi demons themselves. And frankly, this is possibly my favourite Chaos God, and no, it's not because of the sex, drugs and rock and roll, it's because of what Slaanesh represents. And no, it's not just sex, drugs and rock and roll, but those are certainly aspects. The reason that I like Slaanesh out of the four Chaos Gods is frankly because Slaanesh is far more subtle and insidious than the other powers. Like, Khorne is the kind of god that wanders up to you, punches you in the face really, really hard, and, bellows, roars, and, he's very obvious, which has its fun points. Nurgle is going to make you rot and decay and beg for death, or at least beg for life, and then you beg for death, because it turns out being a follower of Nurgle is a pretty rubbish existence. And Tzeentch is just a scheming madman who has plots within plots within plots within plots, which has its interesting sides, but they're a little obvious. Whilst Slaanesh literally is the Chaos God that just says, enjoy life a little bit more each day. Take pleasure in everything you do. Discover, explore what it is you enjoy about yourself. It's a subtle, gentle message which, when you think about it, suddenly turns into something far more insidious, because Slaanesh doesn't actually care about you enjoying life, doesn't particularly care about you experiencing new things. All Slaanesh cares about is extremes, and in order to get you to an extreme, you have to start with baby steps, For example, if you started the miniature gaming hobby, you've probably thought to yourself, I'm really enjoying this. Well, hopefully you're saying, I'm really enjoying this, and I'm fancying collecting more models. And over time, you start collecting more, and eventually you branch out into different games, and more games, and then, before you realise it, you've got several grand's worth of army surrounding you, and you suddenly don't understand why you don't have enough food to eat. The point is that Slaanesh is a deity that basically leads you slowly to damnation. It's not a quick experience. It's not an in-your-face experience. It's something that happens slowly over time and grinds away at your soul. It's subtle, it's insidious, and by the time you realise it's happened, there's very little you can actually do. And, well, that's the reason I find Slaanesh my favourite deity, to be honest, out of the four Chaos Gods, and it's why I've got an 4,000 points of Slaanesh demons for Warhammer 40k, which now I'm going to have some Emperor's Children backing them up, and I'm probably going to dive into the hedonites of Slaanesh because clearly I've not learned my lesson about starting new armies. But anyway, let's try and get back onto the topic. This is meant to be an intro video after all. Slaanesh. Who is Slaanesh? I've kind of glossed over that just now. But Slaanesh is a chaos deity much like the other four. Well, 5, you include the Horde and Rat. Slaanesh is all about pleasure, excess, and extreme. Their warriors are known for being lightning fast. They are known for divulging themselves into all kinds of obsessions and vices. They tend to be a bit on the prideful, arrogant side, even more than most chaos-worshipping nutcases. And they have all manner of ways to infiltrate society. Unlike Khorne, who it's kind of a straightforward progression line, Slaanesh has all manner of ways to get inside people's heads and convince them to start following him or her. Slaanesh is one of these strange deities where, even though in the novels and books there are often references to he who thirsts, there are also references to she who thirsts. And yeah, Slaanesh is kind of one of these creatures that doesn't really have a gender, so I always find it funny when I say he or she, so I try to just say Slaanesh or it. Anyway, in Age of Sigmar at least, Slaanesh had eaten all of the elven souls from the old world. I will get into that when I I start talking about Warhammer Fantasy lore proper, but suffice to say, Slaanesh ate all the elven souls, except for a small handful, and kind of decided to go off and try and digest them in peace. I touched on what happens next in the Marathi video, and yeah, Slaanesh ends up in a prison for the next couple thousand years, and very slowly over time manages to find ways to either break or camouflage the fact that it's making its way out of its chained prison. The demons and followers of Slaanesh during this time split into different bands. One band being obsessed with finding Slaanesh, one being obsessed with basically partying on as though it was the end of the world, and the last ones deciding they wanted to supplant Slaanesh. These followers of Slaanesh are known as the Invaders, the ones who have a lust for gold and for excess and for pretty shiny things, and they're typically led by a Keeper of Secrets, that's a greater demon of Slaanesh, or some kind of dark demonic herald or champion, basically going around and trying to cause as much chaos as possible. You have the Pretenders, who are basically obsessed with becoming the next god of excess, and, well, that's not worked out for them, as we can tell, because Slaanesh is now back. And anyone who decided to be a Pretender is probably very quietly trying to hope that Slaanesh didn't notice. And the last bunch are the Seekers, the ones who had been searching for Slaanesh this entire time, and are probably in his good books. Slaanesh mortal champions, which we now have some fantastic new models for, are obsessed with speed, grace, and lethality. A Slaanesh Chaos Warrior isn't particularly concerned about wearing really, really heavy armour and, well, just screaming at the top of his lungs and hacking things to pieces. Don't get me wrong, there are probably Slaanesh worshippers who enjoy that kind of thing, but on the whole they tend to be more obsessed with speed and finesse over brute strength. This is why, if you had a Keeper of Secrets get into an arm wrestling match with, say, a Bloodthirster of Khorne, yeah, the Slaanesh demon is probably not going to come out okay, but when it comes to speed, yeah, none can beat demons of Slaanesh. Their armies are essentially a glass cannon. They move ridiculously fast, they hit really, really hard, and the hope is that they hit that object as hard as possible and broke it. Because if they don't, then Slaanesh's defenses aren't particularly great. They're very fast, they're very agile, they're very swift. You can easily outmaneuver other armies with them, but if someone manages to pin them down and they get stuck in a brawl, then things are going to get a little bit complicated really, really fast. Honestly, it's one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to the new Slaanesh models. And good old Sigvald, oh, he's a complete character in and of himself, but he deserves his own video. Sorry, I've kind of really gone off the topic there. Anyway, Slaanesh is now free, and we don't really know a whole lot more than that right now, except for the fact that all the Slaanesh followers are converging on this one point, where Slaanesh's essence is kind of manifesting into a new form. So yeah, I'm quietly hoping for some new Slaaneshi demons, which could be pretty sweet. And I am very happy for the new Slaanesh warriors that are coming. But you can be guaranteed that all the elves and elven gods are going to have a bit of a rumble, because Slaanesh has some very, very personal reasons for wanting to exact some vengeance. Being stuck in that shadowy prison for a couple thousand years was cute and all, but it was pretty bored, and there's only so much pain it was taking, only so much experience it was absorbing, and yeah, I imagine it's more than willing to eat some elven souls that Marathi, Teclis, and Tyrion basically repeatedly punched in its stomach to cough up. So yeah, that's the story of Slaanesh. Ironically rather short, because Slaanesh is a character in Games Workshop that they often shied away from. In fact, the main reason I feel that they put Slaanesh in this prison situation is they didn't really know what to do with him. At least not for a very... him. They didn't really know what to do with it. Because Slaanesh, if you look at some of the older models for Slaanesh, let's just say the miniatures had nipples. Horrors, I know. They had nipples. How dare they? Demonettes of Slaanesh is terrible. But even when they created new miniatures, which were slightly more covered, and yeah, Games Workshop seemed to shy away from Slaanesh and from the connotations that it has, the whole sex, drug, rock and roll thing. Which is something I've always scratched my head at, because Slaanesh isn't just those things. Like, you could have someone who has an excess of eating. Like, they've created a new character whose entire shtick is that he's going around the mortal realms eating everything and trying it out. That's an excess. The demonettes with the harps, which is genius to me, are basically demons who have an excess when it comes to musical talents. And humans any worshipper of Slaanesh who becomes obsessed with playing music becomes the instrument, and yeah, that's a pretty gory miniature, which is great. It's showing how excess, going to extremes, is, a bad thing. And it's really funny to me that Games Workshop seemed to take this stance, because rage isn't exactly a positive aspect in the world. Neither is plague and disease. I'm pretty sure we can all agree on that right now, considering our current circumstances. And plots within plots and backstabbing, yeah, I'm pretty sure that we're not all keen on that plan either. But for some reason, Slaanesh, when it came to a specific form of excess, GW were very concerned about. And to be honest, whilst I know children do start playing this hobby, I can't think of any children that I've ever seen picking up Demons of Slaanesh and starting with that army, or particularly caring what the models were. But hey-ho. I'd genuinely be interested in your comments below, because Slaanesh is always an interesting topic. I hope that, rambly though this was a fairly good intro into the hedonites of Slaanesh. Basically, they are Chaos Warriors obsessed with, obsession. They are obsessed with going around causing as much chaos as they can, and doing it for the glory of Slaanesh. Hey-ho. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I will continue doing some more based around Slaanesh for the future AOS Wednesdays, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Until then, take care everyone.